Welcome back to part 2 of the Walters Manuscript, Book of Hours M211. This part is going to be a little shorter than part 1, but that's because most of the illumination process has already been done, and honestly that takes the longest for me. So jumping right into things, I have already done the inner border in part 1, so now I'm starting work on the outer border. I've done mainly freehand in this part, so I've only penciled in vague guidelines before going in with my India ink and my dip pen. So again, you see my paper here that I'm putting my hand on to make sure that I don't get any of the oils off of my skin onto the paper, because in the calligraphy process that just makes things a whole lot more difficult because the ink won't actually stay on the paper. It will bead and pool around. I don't have the exact name for this kind of nib that I'm using, only that I know it's a drawing nib, so it's not used for calligraphy at all. Honestly, this just means that I need to go to the store and buy some new nibs, because when I can't tell what kind of nib I'm using, it means it's very old and it's probably time to replace them. So the border is mainly a bunch of line art. It's meant to be very fluid, so it's not as cartoony as a lot of the earlier period borders and calligraphy and illuminations. There's a lot more organic values to it. It's a lot of wavy lines and leaves and flowers. So it should be very easy to do freehand. I only penciled in the vague guidelines just so I could make sure to get the same shapes and motions that the original manuscript had, but most of it is done based on just observation of what the scroll looked like originally and how I'm interpreting where lines should go, and if some place is a little bit too empty, maybe I should add a little vine there, or this place looks like a great place for a flower, so I'm going to add a flower here, kind of thing. So there's really not much else to say about the line art on the outer border, so I'm just going to put in some music here. Finishing up the line art, I go in and erase all the pencil marks, just so that way I can be sure that there's gonna be no graphite left on it to smudge during the next process. So I basically go in with my gold shell ink and I put it in all of the flowers and leaves that have empty spaces in them. It kind of makes them pop a little bit. Originally this would have been done with gold leaf, but I am not in a place right now where I can afford gold leaf. So shell gold is what I use now because it's quite inexpensive. It's basically mica powder and Arabic gum, so it cost me maybe $5, and I get quite a bit of use out of the little pat that I get from that. There's some other colors that are going to be in the flowers here. They stay true to the colors used on the inner border, so a lot of red, green, and blue, and they're done in the similar way with layering the paints on top of each other rather than mixing them to shade them in better. A lot of times scrolls would be done with 3 layers, doing the darkest layer first, then the mid-tone, and then the lightest on the top. But that would be because everything would be fully dry in between each layer of the paint. Going right on into the calligraphy here. I'm starting off with using a red fountain pen of Schaefer brand. I like to use the red fountain pens because I honestly don't know where to get red ink in where I live, and the fountain pens already come with cartridges in the colors that I like, so it already is a little bit easier for me than to find a bottle of ink somewhere or to go online for that. So as you can see underneath all of my calligraphy, there is vaguest pencil lines, and that is because I want to make sure I have enough room for all of my calligraphy that I'm going to do. So what I do is I write the lines in with a ruler, and then I write down all of the words on top of it in pencil, so that way when I'm going over it with my ink and my dip pen, I can know exactly how much space is going to be there. It always ends up going a little bit over because they're always a little bit larger than what you would write in just printing with your own hand. I honestly should be doing the calligraphy first rather than doing it after I've done all of the painting and illuminations, primarily because calligraphy is a lot easier to mess up and a lot harder to fix. If I were to do calligraphy first and mess up, then I could just restart the calligraphy and no one would know. But if I were to mess up the illuminations, I could just add a flower. So here's the final piece. It's all done, ready to be handed out to its recipient. So thank you all for watching, and if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below, and I will get them to them as quickly as I can.